Good afternoon. I'm Tony Shaffer, the president of the London Center for Policy Research. And we're here today as part of our Thought to Action podcast, presented by the London Center for Policy Research, where the focus is actually discussing policy issues and trying to find a path to solving the problems that we now face. And I'm deeply appreciative and honored to be joined today by my friend Carter Page. Carter has written a book, Abuse and Power: How an Innocent American Was Framed in an attempted coup against the President of the United States. And very quickly, Carter Page is founder and managing partner of Global Energies Capital in New York City and Global Natural Gas Ventures in Oklahoma City, specializing in energy and foreign policy. So he's a natural to be joining us today, both from a perspective of who he is as a professional, as well as what happened to him since Carter, I don't know if you knew this, we are literally standing up this week our new accountability center, which we've talked a little bit about.
Yes.
And we feel that national security policy and things like that are all related. So Carter, welcome to Thought to Action today.
No, it's great to be with you, Tony, and congratulations on the new center. It's what I've heard thus far, it sounds absolutely essential, and I'm really excited about what lies ahead.
Great. Well, thank you. And what I've come to find over the years is that often people find each other, find causes based on trust and belief on someone's reputation and history rather than knowing them directly. And that was the case of why the public doesn't know this. We have not known each other for a great deal of time. Yet, if you go back and look at the last few years, I spoke out vigorously in your defense, supporting you before we know what we know now. Before there was the evidence that we now know that you were targeted illegally by the whole FBI and the Comey bogus investigation. And I hope you don't mind. I'm going to tell the audience. One night I'm in New York doing a talk at an Egyptian event, and out I walk is this guy with a ball cap pulled down low, and you stop me. It's like, hey, I was just blown away because obviously I was one of your fans before I met you, and I accepted. It's like, dude, I'm meeting someone I've always wanted to meet, and I wanted to just tell you how much I appreciated you coming up and acknowledging what I knew to be true when you came up and talked to me. So,
well, the feeling was very much mutual, Tony, and I knew about your incredible accomplishments throughout your career, not only over the longer term throughout your time in the service and since, but what you've been doing with the London Center. It was really exciting, and for better and for worse, all this craziness that I've been through. Unfortunately, I've largely been extracted, if you will, from the foreign policy community. All the stuff I had worked on, throughout my career, going back to my term in the U.S. Navy when I did.
Well, let's talk about that. So, on the first point, look, we are in the energy business, so to speak. We look at the energy policy. Consider this an invitation to come back and get more involved because we would love to have your expertise. We work with a number of people to examine this issue. And secondly, I'd like to hear more about your military service because I don't think people understand that you are a veteran and have served the country in a great deal of ways they don't fully understand. So if we could talk about that a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, Tony. Well, I actually served 5 years. I graduated the U.S. Naval Academy, and actually after graduation, I joined the strategy and policy division on the Navy staff in the Pentagon. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the controversy because one of my areas of focus, I was in the nuclear affairs and international negotiations branch. And during those years in the 1990s, it was in the middle of the U.S.-Russia arms control negotiations, the very START treaties, the initial START 1 and 2. So I was peripherally involved in that, as well as counter-proliferation. So there's a lot of misnomers because, although I did a lot in Russia, I've done national security and foreign policy related work worldwide. So, including Middle East and, throughout Europe as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's great. Well, you may laugh at this, but one of the reasons I got in trouble with my issue, Able Danger, is because I was actually attached to the Navy at an organization called Deep Blue. You may have heard of that organization.
Yeah.
And they sent me over to the Capitol, to Congress, to ask for money for a Navy program. And gee, me being an Army guy, I had no idea I was breaking Navy rules by going and asking for money. Is like, okay, you want me to go ask for money? Next thing you know, I'm a whistleblower. Who'd have thought? But that's a story for another day. I do want to talk about wrongdoing that was perpetrated by the Obama White House against you. Look, I'm someone who's very familiar with the FISA process, the issues that relate to U.S. persons, EO 12333. I know that because I used to be a counterintelligence officer. So let's talk a few minutes just about. We don't have a lot of time, but I'd like to have you back. But let's talk a little bit about your book, Abuse of Power, and why you did it, and what can we learn from it when we read your book.
Well, it really is the inside account of a true life spy thriller.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, as you correctly alluded to, there were operatives within the U.S. intelligence community, unfortunately, working on behalf of the Obama-Biden administration,
right,
the last presidential election cycle. And it was all a big charade from the very beginning in the lead up to the last presidential election. And unfortunately, what has come to be known over the years since is it was driven by the Democrat Party and various operatives and big money operations to hire literally foreign agents to, using the term, dig up dirt, basically
right,
concoct information to make candidate Trump in his first ever presidential election look as bad as possible. And as I just happen to be someone who was at the ground zero of that. I don't know why. I think, maybe it was partially some biases against on a lot of levels, partially. I knew some of these cast of characters going back to my own service in the Navy. So, I think there's always some bureaucratic infighting, et cetera. So,
right. Oh, I know that for a fact.
So, but also, I think as we've seen over the years since, with the subsequent hoax of impeachment, related to Ukraine,
right,
a lot of it is driven, and that's why I'm excited to be with you here, in a policy context, because so much of the punishment that President Trump has been subjected to is just based on different policy approaches. Right. And unfortunately, many of those same operatives or related operatives within the foreign policy and national security establishment have taken very aggressive and very dishonest steps to try to do as much damage as possible. So, long story short, in terms of the reason for the book, I thought it was essential to get the word out and really help American voters and the American public at large understand the terrible events that happened in the last election interference campaign, and to make sure that this never happens again, so that voters, when they go into the polls in less than 50 days now, they know the full story.
So that's a great point. And one of the points I'd like to highlight that you made is that while you were serving on the Navy staff during that same time, I was actually at U.S. Army Intelligence Security Command, and we were running an off-the-books operation known as Carolina Morning, which Jim Woolsey, my friend Jim Woolsey, actually briefed President Clinton on. That's the first time I met Jim back in the mid-'90s. Well, and at the time, I disagreed with the Clinton policy, not so much as in that they were interfering with my operation. They were ignoring the fact that the North Koreans, during this period, we had found they had 5 working nuclear weapons. And instead of acknowledging that, they pretended that they didn't have weapons and went into the nuclear treaty, which is kind of like, excuse me, but I, as a uniformed member, I was a GS-13 at the time running this operation. I didn't have the right to break ranks and say, I disagree with the policy. I did, but it was my job to, as a sworn officer of the U.S. government, to do what I was asked to do. And this is where Vindman and others have abandoned their oath of office. You can disagree with policy, then you need to get out of being in the uniform government. Would you agree with my assessment on that, Carter?
Absolutely. And, given the fact that I served in the Navy during the Clinton administration,
Yeah.
I had personal feelings. I know Mr. Vindman has acknowledged being a never Trumper, but I was deep down in my heart of hearts, I had serious concerns about the integrity of, and frankly speaking, when I got out in 1998, it was really when the impeachment, a real legitimate impeachment was happening. And, I didn't feel, exactly along the lines of what you're saying, but I never in a million years would have considered, this kind of big media charade in terms of.
So very quickly, so what are the biggest two takeaways from your book if someone reads it? I mean, I don't want to give them too much. Don't give away too much so people won't read it. But what are the things they should look for in your book that are new or a deeper understanding? They'll get a deeper understanding from reading your book.
I think one thing which I was never allowed to say before was when this big scandal broke, leading to this Inspector General report, which came out from the U.S. Department of Justice last December. They acknowledged that I had served the U.S. intelligence community. And so a lot of my operations and the things that I had done previously, I was very quiet about, and similar.
I understand why. Trust me, I get that completely.
Well, but unfortunately, and this relates back to exactly what we've been talking about. There are many people that are spinning false stories, and I think, unfortunately, just given the stakes involved and everything that's happened around it, there's two. I guess if I had to kind of break it into two aspects, one is sort of the personal story, but I think it also relates back to the approach and just the way that things are so viciously spun.
Yeah.
In a way that to do as much damage as possible to the president. So I think it's a real eye opener, both in terms of, what's happened in the past, but also, what's at stake in this current election. And for better and for worse, there was just a ruling in the Ninth Circuit, calling other surveillance programs illegal. And so this is not just my rights. This is not just what happened to President Trump, but there's a lot at stake for all Americans. And I think it's important people understand the inner workings on that.
Yeah, and that's what we want to do here. But by the fact that I am both aware and have used these programs, I know how powerful they are and how rigorous the oversight of those programs must be. And I know for a fact that you were badly abused. You were illegally spied on. Things happened to you that no American should ever have to experience, based on the fact that you became an inconvenient witness to the attempted coup against someone who was a candidate and then a president. And again, these systems, these intelligence collection systems, should never be turned internally, but that's what happened. And that's something that we dare not allow for the abuse of, because this, in the wrong hands permanently, these tools could allow for a permanent coup d'etat that allows a certain political party to be in charge indefinitely. And I'm not for Republicans being in charge forever. With that said, I'm for a fair reckoning of the system to talk about what those issues are. And nobody, neither side should control these very, very powerful tools of national security.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tony. And I think what's really lost is the actual focus on policy and substance, and that's another reason why it's great to connect with you and great to hear and watch everything you're doing at the London.
We'll have you back.
Really lacking. I look forward to it.
Yeah, we'll have you back. So again, everybody, please run out and buy Abuse of Power by Carter Page. I'll be getting my copy. I look forward to having you back, Carter, and thank you for being here today. I appreciate your analysis, plus the content of what we can do in the future regarding fixing some of these issues. Thank you all today for joining us for Thought to Action. This again is our new podcast brought to you by the London Center, and we'll be back with you all again very soon with new content. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Doug.